So now I will introduce our final speakers. Kathy White is the Executive Director of the Colorado Fiscal Institute. Before helping to found CFI as a standalone nonprofit in 2012, Kathy served as the Director of the Colorado Fiscal Policy Institute, where she worked on issues ranging from tax credits for low-income families to immigration reform. Prior to that, Kathy worked in policy research and compliance for a national health insurance company. She has nearly 20 years of experience in nonprofit administration, operations, and fundraising, and a master's degree from the University of Colorado, Denver. Esther Turcios is the Deputy Director of the Colorado Fiscal Institute. In this role, she leads research on federal tax policy, safety net programs, housing, and immigration policy, both in Colorado and nationally. Esther first joined CFI in 2017 as the State Policy Fellow. Esther is an active member of the Health Equity Advocacy Cohort and has a background in community organizing and outreach through her work with the Colorado chapter of 9 to 5, Winning Justice for Working Women. She earned both her bachelor's degree in biology and master's in social work from the University of Denver. Please help me in welcoming our final Impact Talk speakers, Esther and Kathy.
A paper trail when you living in the shadows. We America's ghost riders. The credit's only borrowed. It's a matter of time before the checks all come. But
immigrants, we get the job done.
Colorado. It's that other square state in the center of the country, known for its rugged mountains and mile-high vistas. When you think of Colorado, I bet you see something like this. And ours is a story of visibility, of what is seen and what is real, and a fight for visibility. From any view, Colorado is known as Ski Country, USA. Skiing is a huge part of our history. It's a source of our wealth. It's at the very heart of our sense of adventure and our cultural identity. Colorado is home to more Winter Olympians than any other place in North America. We lead the United States in the economic impact of snow activities. Yeah, that's a thing. Every year, skiing accounts for about $5 billion of economic activity in our state and supports nearly 50,000 year-round equivalent jobs. In short, skiing is a big deal in Colorado.
What you don't see reflected in those numbers that Kathy just mentioned are the people behind them. 50,000 year-round equivalent jobs in Colorado mountain towns are service jobs. Waiters, bartenders, housekeepers, lift operators, and cleaners. And those jobs are most often held by immigrants, both with and without documentation. Immigrants make up 14% of workers in those industries compared to 10% of US-born citizens. So yes, skiing is a big deal in Colorado, and immigrants are a big deal in the business of skiing.
And business was booming in March of 2020. It was shaping up to be one of the best seasons of the year, of ever. Yes, there was this troubling election underway with that one guy, and a mysterious virus making its way across the globe, shutting down whole cities. But in Colorado, we didn't see that. The snow was great, and we were on the brink of welcoming spring break revelers and families from around the world. And then, on the biggest arrival day of the year, Governor Polis shuts it all down. The season comes to an abrupt end on March 14th, 2020. In Colorado, we knew then that this was serious. That day, the list stopped spinning, and over the next month, bars and restaurants went dark, planes stopped flying, and people stopped working. The federal government springs into action, using the only tool this country really has to support people who stop working: unemployment insurance. They also see a lot of flaws in the program that must be fixed if this 100-year-old program is going to rise to meet this unprecedented modern-day challenge. They pump billions of dollars into the system across the country. They expand the number of workers who are eligible to receive a benefit. They reduce burdensome requirements, they ease administration, they even raise the benefit level in order to keep people safe at home with a roof over their head and food on their tables.
The federal government sees and fixes a lot of flaws in the UI system, except one very important one. Federal rules prohibit immigrant workers without current work authorization from receiving unemployment benefits, even if their employers have paid UI taxes on their behalf. At CFI, when the state jobs data from April came out, we knew we had a problem. There was a clear gap between the number of reported jobs lost in resort communities and initial UI claims. And it was in that gap that the problem became visible. UI just wasn't reaching everyone who had lost a job, like Katie and her family, who were living in Silverton at the time and were unable to return to their native Colombia when COVID shut the world down. As an undocumented immigrant with no way to return home and without federal supports through UI or stimulus checks, Katie and her family were forced to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. And they previously held real estate and teaching jobs in their native Colombia, but those qualifications never transferred. So they bounced around from retail to hotel to custodial jobs in mountain towns to pay their $2,000 rent.
So we set out to solve this problem in our fight for UI equity. At CFI, like all of you, we're policy wonks. So of course we turned first to the data. Using data from colleagues in this network, we put together a report that documented the amount of money that undocumented immigrant workers had contributed to the Colorado unemployment insurance system over a period of 10 years. We started to make the case that fairness and that the lifeblood of Colorado's economy, skiing, and tourism demanded that we fix this flaw or our economic recovery would be hampered.
As organizers, our partners launched an effort to get private money into the hands of workers left behind by government action. Immigrant rights organizations, service providers, community-based organizations, and philanthropies came together to start the Left Behind Worker Fund and get $1,000 into the hands of undocumented hospitality workers in 40 of our 64 counties. Yep. And as they were providing that immediate relief, they were also building the infrastructure and collecting the stories and really building the people power that we would need outside the Capitol to change policy.
Well, we all knew what we needed to do. So we went to the Capitol. We needed to extend this critical safety net for unemployed workers to undocumented workers who would otherwise be eligible for UI, but for their immigration status. So we went to the Capitol. We met with some legislative champions. We came up with a really creative financing solution, and we drafted a bill. Our 2021 proposal was revenue neutral to employers. It was easy to administer. It was fair, and we thought good for ski country. What could possibly go wrong? Well,
That guy.
that guy. That guy.
That guy.
That guy. That guy. That guy. That guy could go wrong, and he did. For a whole variety of reasons, Governor Polis and his Department of Labor just didn't want this bill. They threw up as many roadblocks in our path as they could, and so despite having good data, despite having strong legislative champions, despite having a creative financing solution, and despite having lots and lots of stories from around our state about how a benefit like this could impact people's lives, we came up short. We failed. Our bill to create an unemployment insurance-like program for undocumented workers became a bill to study the feasibility of such a program. Yeah, everybody groans at the study bill, right? Well, in the beginning, we had high hopes for this feasibility study. We hoped that it would show a path forward for our revenue neutral, easy to administer, fair, good for ski country bill. But alas, it was not to be. An advance copy of the report from the Department of Labor showed that for every $1 in benefits paid through the program, it would take the Department of Labor $161 to administer the program. Yeah, you heard that right. A government agency being willing to put into writing that the most efficient that they could be was $161 in overhead costs for every single dollar of programmatic benefit.
So despite the restaurant, hospitality, and entertainment industries logging the biggest job losses, despite the unemployment rate for undocumented immigrants topping 29%, and despite the philanthropic effort working all across the high country to distribute direct cash aid and rental assistance to families in need, exhausting the funding available from one-time sources, it really looked like our communities would remain in the shadows of our economy and invisible in our laws. But what do we do as advocates? We remain nimble, because we know that when one door closes, that doesn't mean we've lost. That means we pivot and we find another way forward. So we pivoted, because we knew that UI policy that centered undocumented immigrants was winning policy.
That's right. We shifted gears. It was clear now who our biggest obstacle was, and we needed to find a way to work around him. So we took a cue from this guy. We all miss him. The last time Colorado got significant improvements to its UI program was during the Great Recession, when President Barack Obama offered states a small amount of money for their UI trust funds if they made modest pro-worker changes to their programs. At the time, it was a carrot that our business community, our policymakers, and our department couldn't pass up. Well, almost 10 times as much money was beginning to flow into the states through ARPA. And the business community was already lobbying hard for the bulk of that money to go to the UI Trust Fund and to lower UI premiums for employers. It was their #1 priority. And the governor was listening. In his budget request, he allocated $600 million of ARPA funds to the UI Trust Fund. It became his biggest priority. And in that, we saw a way around our biggest obstacle. We went to legislative leadership and the business community and started working on a bill that would give them what they wanted: $600 million to go into the UI Trust Fund in exchange for some very modest pro-worker improvements that would benefit workers, including and especially undocumented workers.
Outside the Capitol, we held our noses on the federal money going to businesses rather than working people, and we held the line with legislators. The unemployment assistance program for undocumented immigrants was our bottom line, and we mattered in an election year when many of our biggest champions were sure to face tough battles in that predicted red wave.
So as the 2022 legislative session opened, we again turned to the strength of this network. First, to neutralize that ridiculous feasibility study coming out from the Department of Labor. We turned to the Immigration Research Initiative and the Century Foundation, who did a feasibility study of their own, using New York's excluded worker program as a model. Next, we turned to experts in the network to have them help us craft a solid UI solvency bill that also contained these very modest worker improvements. Senate Bill 234 was one of the very last bills introduced during the 2022 legislative session. Among many things, it allocated $600 million of ARPA funds to shore up the UI Trust Fund. And it created a permanent and small diversion of UI premiums that employers pay that is put into a state-only fund that could be used to pay unemployment-like benefits to workers without current work authorization. Yeah. It was a heavily negotiated bill, but because of the great work that was done outside of the building, the Colorado Speaker of the House and our legislative champions knew our bottom line, and they navigated that difficult terrain with the governor's office on our behalf. I'm proud to say that our bill was sponsored by a Denver Democrat and a Republican from ski country, both members of our very powerful Joint Budget Committee.
And CFI, along with their grassroots partners, namely the Colorado People's Alliance,
lobbied this bill side by side with the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the Colorado Restaurant Association.
and
No small feat.
in the waning days and hours of the legislative session, when we're all tired and getting on each other's nerves, we finally won.
Woo! Yes! Yeah. Our house sponsors.
Governor Polis signed Senate Bill 234 on June 7th. The money from the diversion of UI premiums has already been transferred to a state fund, and the third-party administrator has been selected. And by March of 2023, 3 years after that terrible day in March of 2020 when COVID shut the world down, benefits will be available to the workers who are so critical to our state.
This victory means a lot to Colorado. True, the number of people who will directly benefit from the program, we estimate, is small. But we've already been contacted by our friends and partners in states with much larger immigrant populations: New York, New Jersey, California, Washington, all looking to replicate our win in their state. Yeah. And we hope for their success. We hope that the impact goes national. Because as I said at the beginning, ours is a story of visibility. Our laws, the programs that we have for workers and the economy, should reflect the reality of our workforce. They should see and value the contribution and dignity of every person who makes our economy work.
For Kathy and I, this is a personal victory. As children of immigrants, my parents are immigrants from Central America who have held multiple service jobs throughout my life and who have called this country home for more than 40 years.
My mom was an immigrant. She waitressed most of my life, working alongside immigrants from all over Asia, Central America, and Mexico. The immigrant experience looms large in our lives. We know how hard immigrants work, especially in these service jobs, with low pay, no benefits, often unseen.
We know how they overcome barriers and challenges to navigate a system in a language not their first, to make it in an environment that's sometimes downright hostile to people who look and sound different. We know what exclusion and invisibility feels like, and we know because of them.
And we know that that exclusion and invisibility has no place in our laws, in our country, or in the safety net that is there to serve us all. And we know because of them. Thank you.
We get the job done.